Fantastic. Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us on yet again another episode of the podcast. And today I have a phenomenal guest with me in the studio, and we're going to be having a very interesting conversation around waste to wealth, unlocking the power of circular agriculture in Africa. And our guest today is Joyce Kamande, all the way from Kenya. She's going to be teaching us more about circular economy in Africa, and she happens to be the COO of Safi Organics. And so, before we start out the conversation, I will read out her bio so that we get to know her much more better. Joyce Kamande is the visionary social entrepreneur whose work is deeply rooted in creating sustainable solutions for food security and rural development across Africa. She is the co-founder and chief operating manager of Safi Organics, a pioneering agribusiness that transforms crop waste into high-quality organic fertilizers, tailor-made for the need of small-scale farmers. Through her leadership at Safi Organics, Joyce has been instrumental in building decentralized production system that brings fertilizers manufacturing closer to farming community. This is not only reduces the cost and the carbon footprint of traditional fertilizers supply chain, but also empowers farmers to boost their yield and income using environmental friendly methods. Joyce ensures that Safi Organics fertilizers are accessible, affordable, and available and where farmers needs them the most. Joyce is passionate about social impact, and this has shaped her from her early professional experience in the insurance and technology industry, where she worked as a procurement officer for over 3 years. Her decision to transition into agribusiness was driven by the desire to make more direct and lasting contribution to underserved community, especially in rural Africa. Today, Joyce is not only helping to build more resilient farm systems, but she's also inspiring a new generation of young leaders to explore innovative ways in agriculture, circular economy, and community empowerment. So, Joyce, welcome. I must say that your profile is really impressive.
Thank you, Osarugue, for the introduction, and thank you for having me today in your podcast. I'm very excited and looking forward to the discussion.
Beautiful. That's really good. So, as we delve into the conversation today, let's start out with your journey. Let us know what sort of, I know I've said that in your bio, but I also like you to sort of reiterate a bit. What inspired you to transition from insurance and even technology, which is like a dominant, industry right now, to agriculture and specifically the circular economy part? And what was that turning point for you?
Thanks. That's a good question. First, I would also add that I'm a farmer. So
Oh,
apart from making fertilizers, farming is a business. Yeah. So I'm a
good.
proud farmer in that sector. So having my hands-on day-to-day activities with the experience of smallholder farmers across the continent. So we share the same challenges, right? And so going back to more than 10 years ago, so insurance was something that I used to do when I was in the university. I did a few businesses here and there, but
Okay.
selling insurance was doing in campus in the second year, the third year, and the fourth year. So that was exciting. It was going on well. But just to say, I studied procurement and logistics. Um,
Mm,
so I had zero background in agriculture, and so of course, as an African individual that I had was to work
okay.
in corporates in the corporate world. And get a white collar job, get I'm the first one in the family, get our siblings out of poverty and our family out of poverty. Which was pretty, it was like go to school, work hard, get a job, and
Mhm.
the cycle continues. But then during my fourth year in the university, I met my co-founder. His name is Samuel Rigu. So we co-founded Safi Organics together. But my interest actually sparked when he was telling me, I'm doing this research. And we are utilizing waste to make briquettes. And I was like, what is briquettes? So by that time, briquette was really, really new. So I was like, this sounds
Wow.
cool. And because I was in the fourth year and I had a lot of time, I was like, why would I not help you out, do research? So when we are doing research, I fell in love with the concept because I was like, this sounds interesting. I've not seen anybody doing this. And furthermore, was the vision that he was telling me, if we recycle this waste, we are going to reduce, greenhouse gas emissions. The waste that we're using by that time used to take 7 to 10 years to decompose. So that
Yeah.
sparked my interest.
Mm-hmm.
So we did make briquettes when I was in the fourth year, but that was not successful, apparently, sadly. So after that, we got into mosquito coils, manufactured around 1 million and sold about the same million mosquito coils in the market.
It's
And
good.
by that time, we're still using the rice husk as our major source of biomass. And
Mm.
the partner we were working with was like, your mosquito coils are burning around 6 hours, but the normal mosquito coils in the market are burning for 8 hours. Why don't you change from, rice husk and incorporate rice husk? And we are like, yeah, that sounds interesting. But then we still have tonnages of, rice husk still laying on the ground. Nothing is being done about it. It was a nuisance seeing that people are burning rice husk all over. So there were smokes all over. And we are like, no, apparently we are still very young. By then I was 22. I was like, yeah, we still have time to make mistakes. We were like, no, because we have restrictions in terms of capital and the funding, because both of us were really young. After just him, he had finished campus. For me, I was in the fourth year. So we are like, no, we can't do this. It doesn't seem feasible for us at that time. So we said,
Yeah.
why can't you not, do more research and see what can be developed from these writers? Because they have to be something that is workable. And actually, that's how now Safi Organics was born. We realized, after we did, about more research, we found that the rice husk is turned into biota and it can be used as a soil amender. So that's
Okay.
how coincidentally I found myself in the agricultural space. It was by luck. And of course, after luck, I made a choice to stay in the agricultural system because my call to action at that time was the problem that I'm solving is actually what has been affecting my community. Because
Mm.
if we are solving soil issues, that directly means that we are solving food security issues. So that sparked my
Yeah.
interest, and I would say that that's what kept me going by that time, and which still keeps me going at this time because we still have we have decimal results in terms of the journey that we are taking for food security.
Mm, wow, that's really beautiful, really beautiful. It's just interesting to know that you guys had seen a problem and you applied yourself to wanting to create solution to solve that problem, and that's how like the journey began for you. And it's also beautiful to hear that over the years, like what you started out with, you transitioned, then now onto this, all within the secular economy, just allowing people know that okay, sometimes when you start out with something it might work for a while, then you move to something else, still pivot within the same ecosystem. So thank you so much for sharing that. So when we talk about circular economy, what exactly does that mean in a more practical term in terms of like small scale farmers or small scale farmers in Africa? Can you sort of break that down for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. Circular economy sounds like, it's a big, big, big word, but
Yeah.
just explaining to a layman language, it's using the minimal locally available resources within your reach, and then turning it around, creating value into it and getting to the same system. So it's like it's a continuous or kind of loop that needs to,
Yeah.
from the beginning, and then it gets back to the beginning. Yeah, so for example, when a farmer decides, I'm doing the harvesting, after the harvesting, rather than throwing away the biomass waste, why would I not bury it? That is
Yeah.
circular economy in its own simple way. It's just recycling what you have, minimal resources within the most efficient, and using also minimum investment or minimum capital, just to ensure that you're using the minimum resources as much as possible and looping them back to the system, rather than doing a lot of dumping and all that. It's just embracing what the minimal resources you have in a more efficient way.
Fantastic.
And
So
so another example I would post here, yeah, another example probably I would also post here is when farmers opt to like use wood waste, maybe from the forest, from their own
Mhm.
fences to make biochar using
Mhm.
Kontiki, because like for use a high-end tech, they cannot be able to do that, but they can be able to produce biochar using Kontiki method or a method where they dig holes on the ground, lit the biomass, and then it produces biochar. And then after producing that biochar, they take it back to the farm. They can do it maximally, but then they're still doing small contribution that is still creating impact. One step at a time. But what matters is that we are still making small steps towards meeting the goal.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. We know that waste management is more like a growing concern, particularly in like rural or even urban farming communities, right? So what are like the most common types of agricultural waste you have seen, and and why they are sort of overlooked, even though that they are valuable resources?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a lot of tonnages, metric tons of waste produced across the continent every day. In
Yes.
Nairobi alone, we estimate around 10,000, which is quite huge. And I would say some of the waste that are generated daily is the household waste. Everybody,
Mm,
every house, as long as you're eating, you're cooking, you're generating waste. But
true.
people never see that, as something that they can turn into something useful. So, for example, if you have a family of five, Africa, we are big families. So, of course, that means that you'll have contribution of a few kgs here and there of waste. For example, when you're cooking, the peels of bananas, the peels of potatoes, name them. But then what people don't do, you just put them in the bin. Somebody comes collect if you're lucky, if you're staying in the urban centers. But then if you're staying in the rural areas, you just put it in the bin, throw it in the farm, or dump it somewhere here and there. But then some of the opportunities that are available in this is, and I would mention my government because there was such a regulation that is coming up, though it has not been picked up on segregation of waste. So, for example, you are able to, segregate the food waste, which you call organic waste in this case. You
Yeah.
can segregate the plastic waste and the metal waste and all that. So some are biodegradable, some are non-recyclable. So if you're able to segregate that, let's say, for example, it's plastic, you segregate that. If it's metallic, you segregate that. And then there are different sources and different funds that's coming in the market to actually purchase these. So that is an opportunity that people can actually tap into. And it's not, people overlook that either by one, they're not informed. Secondly, they find it's a lot of work. So you find that the waste collectors coming in to collect, they have to do the double work. Collect all of it, then segregate, sell what they can be able to sell. Some recycle, which means a lot of work. So, but then those are some of the available ways that can actually be utilized. Another type of waste that I would like to mention is probably the maize combs, and especially
Mm.
because farming is a staple food in most parts of the countries in Africa, and so you find that the maize stalks, the maize combs, some farmers cannot actually be able to utilize all of it because they are farming in a huge chunk of land, and especially the maize combs. So you find, and they are easily, I would say they are fragile because if you stock maize combs somewhere, they are rained on, they get spoiled, they start decaying. So you
Yeah.
cannot even use them as fuel. But of course, those people, why not don't use them as a cooking fuel, but that can be recycled to different types of, value added to actually produce different types of things, which most players or entrepreneurs are getting. So they can use maize combs, they can sell them on a small margin because the people who are doing the collection are actually coming to the farm or to where the people are doing the milling of the maize. So yeah. I mean, those are some of the waste that are found, but the most available waste is the market waste. Is a lot that is ending up at the dumping.
Oh wow. Incredible. It's good to know that there are like different kinds of ways, the way waste can be sort of separated, and also even the usability of the waste themselves. It's just it's good to know that. Running Safi Organics, right? What is like the biggest misconceptions you have seen from farmers? Because they also have a misconception about organic fertilizers made from waste. So what's like the biggest misconception you've seen, And how have you sort of helped them overcome those doubts or misconceptions?
Yeah, a good question. So, getting back to 10 years ago, because Safi Organics was established in 2015 from an idea. And of course, we are locally set up in a village where the biomass is available. Uh, Getting to 2015 February, and then I tell our farmer, by the way, you're making a fertilizer. He's like, making a fertilizer from what? Are you you are doing the collection of the rice husk that has always been laying over? And telling me you're making a fertilizer. I'm like, yeah, and it's an organic fertilizer. So the farmers, wait a minute, how do you make, waste and make an organic fertilizer that is certified, and you tell them, it can be a standalone fertilizer. So that doesn't make sense. And why it doesn't make sense? Because an average farmer in Kenya and in Africa is around 45, right? So if they have been farming for the last 20 years, the fertilizer they know is the granulated, imported
Mhm.
synthetic fertilizer. And even though it's an organic fertilizer, it was actually imported. So the fact, like, well, how do you certified organic fertilizer from our own locally available biomass? That is one thing they are not able to come up to actually understand, get it into their head by 10 years ago. But things are changing. The other misconception farmers have is that you cannot farm organically with organic fertilizer and still get a good harvest, right?
Mhm.
Because they believe on the provision of minerals and NPK from the imported
Yeah.
synthetic fertilizers. That is what is in their head. Yeah, and so they have this misconception that organic fertilizers are bad, they are not profitable, and the other thing is like they are super, super expensive. When you hear the word organic, it's like, yeah, that is expensive, which sometimes might be the case and sometimes not be the case, because if you're producing locally, there's some of logistic costs, and taxes and tariffs and all that you're able to avoid. So that's
Yeah.
not always the case, but those are some of the misconceptions that farmers have. Organic fertilizers don't work. You cannot manufacture an organic certified fertilizer locally using our own available biomass waste and for it to work. Thirdly, it's just a way that they are already, ingrained to what they have been using over the many years during their farming season. Even when I'm growing up, I know how fertilizer should look like. So that misconception of how fertilizer should look like and how it actually looks like when it's organic most of the time, because 90% of the organic fertilizers are actually in powder form, because it has to be
Mm.
from manure, compost, now bio. So it's you find that key players coming up in the market, like Safi Organics, when we are having a consistent product. So that can show you the whole process. So yeah, that's how it has been, and how we are able to convince them that this fertilizer works was like our first farmer. We gave him our bags. We told him, look here, Mr. Dan, we have a fertilizer. Please, can you apply it in your farm? It was a 1 acre rice farm, and if it works, you can pay us back. If it doesn't, don't pay us a dime any time. And so he did apply the fertilizer. Remember, it was in December 2015, and he was like, "Yeah, let me do the application of fertilizer." So in July, August, because that's when we start farming. And then in December, he was like, "Oh, you guys, can you come over for a goat feeding?" And I'm like, "Why?" Because he did actually 100% increase in yields. So from 10 bags to around 22 bags. So that was amazing. So with the demos and encouraging farmers for a start, actually, we are like, wow, even ourselves, we are surprised. We need to do an increase of yields. Then I see from the literature review, it was around 30%, but this time it's like 100%, actually plus, because there was the two bags. So we're like, oh, okay, that sounds amazing. So with that farmer, we actually now get to use this farmer as an ambassador who brings other farmers to actually see. And
Mm.
also the other thing that we have done is demonstration plots where we also bring in other farmers in those farms, uh, walk them through the journey of how we're using Safi organic fertilizers from the start, the application from the top dressing all through, and then we do the comparison between an acre which is just next to each other that is using Safi organic fertilizers and another acre that is using, the normal practices of a farmer, whichever kind of product we use, and then we do the comparison. So a farmer believes in what they are able to see; they don't believe in stories.
Yeah.
So if they're able to we got some farmers onboarded on, Safi Organics works. Yes, it's a local fertilizer, but it's working, and that's how we got to have our traction, our numbers tracked for the farmers that are using our products. So we write on our farmers who are using the products to act as a ambassadors. And that's how we have got where we are today, serving over 15,000 smallholder farmers across the country.
Wow, that's a lot. You guys are doing a lot. 15,000 farmers. That's good. Good numbers. And just hearing that there was 100% yield increase as against the 30% that you guys have projected. So that means it works really well. It works really well, as good as inorganic fertilizers as well. So my next question to you at this time is, what do you think the role of circular agriculture plays in tackling soil degradation or even climate change, especially in African countries where we face more unpredictable weather patterns? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so circular economy in its own self, of course, translates to different practices. Which is the most famous, is regenerative agriculture. Is part of circular
Yeah.
economy. Yeah, but there are also other, agroecology, many practices that are involving the circular economy. And why I truly believe is that in Africa, how do circular economy contribute to improving our soils, and how does it also act in reducing the impact of climate change? Is because Africa is a farming continent, and most of our GDP and what we are producing is actually backed on agriculture. And agriculture is a whole perspective, not only farming, but also in terms of the food consumption people are eating every day. So if we don't do anything around, the wastage that we are generating, the practices that we're embracing in our farms, then we might be doing zero work. And just bringing into numbers is that, most of our soils in Africa are actually acidic. And how did we get here? We got here
Yeah.
because of the practice in the over application of, the synthetic fertilizers, and also us ignoring farming God's way, ignoring getting back what we have gotten from the field. And so we are not paying back our soils. And so, of course, they get agitated, they get frustrated. And so what do? They have decline in soil properties and organic matter and all that. And that's how we end up, getting more of what we think that is needed for the farm. But the call to action at this point is that we need to feed our soils. We are talking about increase in yields, but then what is needed is actually feeding our soil so that it can become a stable source of growing our foods very organically, and if not organically, maximally what best it can be able to produce. And so how circular economy plays a key role is because it's providing organic matter to our soil. The other thing it
Yeah.
does, it also helps to actually farmers not to use so much of a lot of inputs in the field because the soils are fertile, they are able to generate automatically or naturally without a lot of pressure. And so we're not making them get tired, if I may say so. And so the other thing that we are also solving is, there's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. For example, the way Safi Organics is working with is rice husk biomass. And the other biomass that we're also scouting in the market. So if I talk about rice husk biomass, it takes about 7 to 10 years to decompose if left on the ground. What that literally means is that there's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions that is released to the environment, right? So if this kind of waste is recycled, it has the capacity, and talking about transforming the rice husk into this product called biochar, and applying it in the farm, it has a capacity to sequester about 1.4 tons of CO2 from the environment, right? And burning it in the soil. So what that means is that we are drastically contributing to climate change, to solving the climate change crisis that we have at the moment. And the thing is, people would actually say, why are we bothered that, we should do something about climate change? How did we get here? We did not contribute. But the fact is, climate change is real. It's already here. Either you contributed to it or you did not. It is a high time for you to do something about it, because we're talking about the current generation and the future generation. You bring in your
Mhm.
kids here, you bring in your family here. what kind of a life you want them to live. And so if to do something that is contributing to solving climate change is on starting with you on a personal level. And in this case, for example, as a farmer, you have to do things right and in a more effective way, not the old ways that we've been used to doing practices in agriculture, but in a new way that is also sustainable, right? And even as a consumer, a person who is consuming food, what are you contributing in terms of agriculture? Because if you are having a lot of food in the house, you keep dumping, we are talking about food loss, we will never get anywhere because it's not about production, it's about a balance between production and consumption. Farmers do the
Yeah.
best they can, and sometimes supply chain getting this product to the consumer. There's a lot of food loss that is happening, and it's huge in the country. From there, if the food gets to your house, what are you doing about it? Are you consuming responsibly? Because if you don't, you're also contributing to climate change. So it's a call to action to everybody. Let's embrace the circular economy because it's working for us. Less capital is needed. If I say less money is needed, so it's a more of trying to use the available resources that you have within your own space, and how you are able to turn that around to making things in terms of production, the consumption become more cheaper and efficient. Yeah, so it does contribute, to soil degradation and climate change if it's not used appropriately.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Personally, I believe that the work that you guys are doing at Safi Organics, it's amazing. Just hearing that you guys have served over 15,000 farmers there in Kenya, and it would be great to see that that work is scaled across Africa. So my question to you at this time is, what do you think are like some of like the policy changes, the funding infrastructures, or even the partnerships that would be needed to be able to, sort of scale the work that you guys already do within Sci-Fi Organics?
Yeah, so as we look into the future, Safi Organics looks at the future as you want to be the leading biochar producing company in Africa. That. And so looking at a scale-up model where we incorporate the youths, we incorporate agripreneurs, we can use our technology and unite under the brand of Safi Organics to make their own organic fertilizer, right? And so, for example, doing research in Uganda and Tanzania, there's some of, there are things that you don't want to dwell with, especially maybe coming from a different country, because different, you have to accept that we are different, we do things differently, but at the end of the day, we're still Africans, right? And
Yeah.
Africa is our business. So let's say I want to set up in Tanzania. I will need a local or a Tanzanian to actually help me out navigate this landscape because they know the structures very well, political structures, social structures, and the adoption of even of the product in the market. So, excuse me. So what we look into is that if the one of the pivot stakeholder in this case is the government, and those are the policies that are set by the government. For example, scaling up in agriculture and especially on fertilizer production is not easy. The machinery are really, really expensive. So if the government can, can cut on tariffs of importing, circular economy machineries, or somebody who is contributing to recycling of waste, and tax exempting the machineries, that would be great because what it does, it encourages local industrialization, right? And it also encourages people to get into that space because one thing we need to identify and recognize is that we say agriculture is highly funded, but it's not because if you're talking about the investment getting into the agriculture, they're still very minimal. And the work that is needed in agriculture is more. And in this case is that if we can get in partners, investors coming in to invest in agricultural-based businesses and recognize that, agriculture is not like under cool tech. I will not get, quick returns as if somebody was, investing in another space. And that's for sure. So the patience and somebody and partners who understand the journey and how we got here and how this space looks like and not copy pasting it from somewhere else because somebody did something um, similar in another different context. is those kind of different dimensions and different changes, and getting the right people who understands what is really happening on the ground is what is needed. And government support is one that I highly mention, because I feel that's an integral stakeholder who is really playing a key role in agriculture, and especially even setting up businesses like that. And when we talk about fertilizer subsidies in the continent, it's a huge, political tool, and farmers need subsidized fertilizers. But then we ask ourselves, we have important and key players like Safi Organics, among others, many, who are doing the production of organic fertilizer in their country, but then they can get that product subsidized, and they're still presenting their product in the field with the same products that are subsidized. So that poses a huge challenge. So my call to action would be, why not, as well as we are subsidizing the synthetic imported fertilizers, we also need to have a space and a certain cap that we also need to subsidize the organic locally manufactured fertilizers, so that we can encourage industrialization, so that we can encourage more entrepreneurs to come into the space, and also this product can become competent with the same price as also the synthetic fertilizers, which are subsidized. Yeah, so those are some that are coming on top of my head, but that's what I think that poses some challenges, especially in this agricultural landscape in Africa.
Yeah, I like the part where you talk about restructuring in terms of like the policy and even subsidization from the government as well to aid much more scaling of such impactful work as regards that. And so this is like my final question to you. We still have a lot of young people who see agriculture like old-fashioned and like unprofitable ventures. How can circular economy sort of create like new business models or job opportunities for the African youths? What's your thought around that?
Yeah, we need more people and more youths like myself. I'm still under 35. So we still need more youths in the agricultural space. But why are we even asking this? Because in some of the careers, we are talking about gender, not about getting youths into that space, because they feel attracted to it. So uh, number one, people say, you need to make agriculture sexy. No, we need to make agriculture profitable. Because where there's
Yes.
money, where there's profitability, people are going to be attracted. But how are we
Mm.
packaging it? Sometimes it's very sad when you see an African farmer, how they look like. You don't want to be a farmer. And surprisingly is that when I tell somebody I'm a farmer, you can see the reaction on their faces. Oh, and I'm like, how should farmers look like, right? So the way we package it from the communication, that is one. We recognize that we're having few people coming in and say and putting these nice pictures of people who look like this Kamande, who are farmers, and don't look, oh, she's a farmer. She look really very nice. Doesn't have to be the person in the dirty hats and all that. But the fact is, agriculture is about, don't talk about agriculture if you're not talking about soils, right? Because that's the genesis of what agriculture is. And people need to get into this space. There's more there's more app system, software, hardware that are coming up in the space. But then, how do we integrate? Because all of us cannot fit in the app sector, but we need more minds and fresh minds in the agricultural sector, and especially even on the farming and the value addition. So agriculture is not all about going to the farming using the djembe and how we have seen it when we are growing up. But now things are changing. We are transitioning the systems. But of course, as Africa, it's going to take us some time to get there, to really automate the agricultural space. But there's more than that, because number one, youth can plug in. Let's say, for example, in advocacy of policies and all that. They can also do value addition, where you get the product, do value addition to it, like how we are having dried fruits, how we are doing potato flour, those kind of flours, banana flour and all that. That is also a space that youth can plug in. You can also plug in where they become influencers. They're trying to advocate, train people, because what is lacking also in agriculture is that there's duplication of what trade, but there's also a mismatch. The thing is, why could a youth not rise up and identify a space and the challenges that our farmers are having in Africa, and actually tap into that? And the other thing is that in every aspect, what we need to look around is how much are we getting? How can we transition or make a dollar be getting, multiply that dollar into $2? Those are the spaces that we need to check in. So it's becoming more innovative, not relying on what agriculture has previously been termed to be and how it has actually been done before, but trying to check which gap are we having here? How can we resolve that? And also to add into that is even on market linkages, because one of the challenges that we have is that farmers are farming, but then even after farming, and to me, I always say a farmer is the most vulnerable person who ever exists, be it weather, be it farming, be it marketing, be it selling their product. We all have problems all around, right? So if we can be able to solve just one segment, and it needs to be probably, let's solve the issue about marketing, because the farmer is farming all this, but at the end of the day, they're stranded. Where can they sell the product? If they sell the product, they're making losses. Sometimes we talk to subsistence farmers and they're like, they just farm, because if they talk about profit, then they can no longer farm, right? So it's about,
Yeah.
the question is, how can transition, from making just a product, from just getting all plugging in the agricultural sector to making it more profitable. And I think the youths are bringing in a fresh perspective, fresh mind, fresh energy, and they are the future. So more of even having key stakeholders playing part. An example, the government, because it can actually, how agriculture is integrated from, primary, secondary, and all that. Just for people to understand that food is an inevitable topic that we need to talk about. It's our everyday today challenges, but it's also integrated in other departments and other industries. And that's how we propel agriculture, because it's a whole spectrum. It has to depend on other sectors for it to
Yeah.
actually grow and grow very fast. So I think that brings brings some sense, but those are my 2 cents in that regard.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Youth can plug in even within the value addition. You don't have to be in the production value addition chain, whether it's marketing, it's sales, it's communications. There's all different, facets that youth can come in and just utilize their skill sets, which is also like a firm belief that I have. I feel like agriculture is one of the sector that has enough room for so many people to play in, regardless of your skill set, your expertise, your competencies. There's always something for you within the agricultural space. So that will be it. I know that you have to run now, so that would be like the final question for us. But just like your pattern shot, which would be like more or less like your advice to any person listening to this call, whether they're like a farmer, a student, or an entrepreneur, in terms of one step they can take right now to start seeing waste not as a burden but as a potential source for wealth. What would be that one advice? That's your pattern shot for us.
Yeah, yeah, my parting shot. I will always say that as long as you eat, you're directly involved in agriculture. So what I'm
Mm,
doing now in Safi Organics, value, I can do, value addition to the resource, which is in the circular economy. But we cannot all fit here, and we cannot all be in agriculture. But when I talk about waste, as I said earlier, it starts with you as an individual. And how are you managing your waste? Because number one, when you see waste, you can see it as a resource. And the other thing is like, how people just traveling and throwing away waste and all that. That thing is, it makes it even more complex, even for waste collectors and even for the environment itself. But if you start seeing or valuing waste as something that you can tap into, because most of the time is that when individuals don't see waste as something that they can actually even venture into, because what can you do with these waste? Number one is that get online. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, there are a lot of innovation happening across the globe, leave alone Africa. If you read about the history of Singapore, you're gonna be amazed about what they are doing with their own within their own country to get where they are today. And it's about waste, turn it into valuable products. So get there online, connect with the right people who are doing something around waste, and that will spike your mind. What can I do better? And the other thing is that start from where you are. And starting from where you are is starting from your own house. Disintegrate that waste, because you'll be amazed by how much plastic have you accumulated over the last 6 months. And actually, somebody who is a waste collector or a waste picker can actually purchase that. And you're also contributing, to a cleaner environment and a more eco-friendly environment for us all. So start where you are, get online research, know what people are doing, know what countries are doing, which kind of technologies are being used. But even though you cannot get into that space, we still need you as a stakeholder and as a user and as a consumer or somebody who generates waste every day to play your role. It doesn't matter how small it is, but then we still need you. And as I said, as long as you eat, you're directly involved in agriculture. So contribute your quota to this industry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Joyce, for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, and your time with us today, and just enlightening us more about circular economy within the agriculture niche and in Africa. Uh, Thank you so much for the work that you're also doing with Safi Organics. And I wish you guys much more success, even as you expand with the work that you're doing across Kenya and even much more across Africa as well. So thank you so much for your time today.
Sareg, thank you, Africa Integrative Agriculture Network, for the invite and having me today as a guest speaker. I really appreciate. Thank you all for listening in. Thank you for contributing, to the welfare of our African continent. So thank you very much, and all have a very wonderful day ahead.
All right.